Hello, hello, welcome ladies and gents to a new tutorial. We'll be looking at Arnold and how to do some complex rendering with the new Arnold 5 shaders and get to know the workflow in Maya. Now there are many different videos out there. This one's just to show you a very simple way of creating fluids and glass and just a simple workflow. For more complex stuff, there are other channels out there that you should follow, such as Arvid Sachander. I think I'm butchering his name, but anyway, this is his channel. I really recommend watching his work. He's very, very good. And then join us on Slack, which is something he set up so you could ask questions and so on and share stuff. So with that being said, let's get started. Alright, so the first step that I usually take is setting up Maya to be more friendly for rendering. In this case, what I want to have is my all my tools in one place. So usually I bring up the outliner, and by pressing this button here, I will load it here. I could also bring in my hyper shader, which I will dock together with the outliner so I can switch between them. Sometimes I'll just dock the outliner with it, like so. But I really don't need it right now, so let's put them together. I think it's better. I usually close the attribute editor from the hyper shader. It's just not useful. Now, if I was going ahead and to simulate using Bifrost the fluids, and I'll make a separate video for that, I would leave the timeline, but in this case I just modeled out the fluid. I'm just going to get rid of my timeline, so I'm going to hold down spacebar, and on the right hand side I'm just going to remove everything that is useless for now. I got Arnold here, so I don't need the shelf, and got rid of the help line, and I leave the command line so I can get information. Alright, so this is the main area, and we are going to start off by opening the render view. So let's open the render view, and this is what I get by default. I put Arnold dome light in, and I want to bring in an image. So to do that, I'm going to press the attribute editor, and over here, after I selected the dome light, I'm just going to bring in an HDR. It really depends what kind of background you want. So now let's go. I got some HDRs set up for me. Let's see. This is a good one. So do that. I get, harsh lighting. I can now grab this and rotate it around just so I get nicer lighting. Alright, so I get lighting from there. I like where the camera is. I'm actually going to just create a new camera. This is going to be, that means I got to close this now. So create a new camera. Turn that on. I'm going to lock my position. So I'm just going to go lock that there. Alright, cool. So now when I go to Arnold render view, that will come up. I'm going to choose to render. It should have, looks like it's rendering, yeah, it's rendering perspective 1. So there we go. So there's perspective 1. I'm going to dock this up here. Drag that there. Alright, cool. So I got my render here. I got my everything set up. I'm going to clear out everything that's in here. All right, and turn on my grid. Cool. I am ready to start. Sorry, I'm ready to start working in this stage, and we'll do that in the next segment. All right, cool. So we are ready to start, and the first thing I want to do is create the glass. So I'm gonna go and call up an AI standard shader. So I'm gonna press tab, and I'm over here, press tab and go AI standard shader, which is the second one down, and I'm gonna just drag and drop that onto the glass, and you'll see it immediately will change. You'll get a nicer reflection. We are going to go Control A, so we got that there. Standard shader, and I'm going to name it. So glass matte. So now we know this is a glass. To start off, I'm just going to use the default settings. So we're just going to go glass, replace, bam, we done, we can go home. So we got just a standard glass. I'm going to do a few little changes. I want this a thicker glass, so I'm going to just push this up to 1.56, and you'll see that we're getting slightly harsher glass there. Alright, now I'm also going to just roughen up the specular highlights a bit. And let's start off, before I do any other changes to the glass, let's start off with adding some fingerprints and some dirt onto this. So it's fairly easy to do. If I took down the specular, you see that we get these highlights here, and I actually want to show that off. Let's see, maybe we should do this with the coat. Made this a rough coat. Alright, let's see what we can do with this. Alright, I'll start off with this, and if this works, it will be great. So I got an image that I prepared prior to this, and downloaded off the internet some smudges. I'm going to stop the render. And those smudges basically is just an image from the internet. Let's bring that up. Something like this. So you can get like fingerprint smudges, and you can get stuff like this. So just like dirty glass, and this is what I want to get on top of my glass here, right? So what I'm going to do is just go tab and go AI, image. Alright, so we're using just Arnold nodes, as you can tell, and I am going to pump this in to the specular color, and then let's turn this on and see what's happening. I'm getting there's no file pumped in, so let's just call up that file. So I have in my source images this file set up for me. Yeah, this is the one I want. And there we go. So you can see there's an immediate change. So now what I want to do is start playing around with this a bit. So let's make this extremely rough. And I'm going to just dial it down until it looks something like this. So now we got a very rough kind of looking glass. So it looks very cloudy. What I'm going to do is isolate my selection. So if I do that now, I can see exactly what's going on over here. Now if I want to change this around a bit, what I can do is to start messing around with these. So I can, just rotate this around a bit, maybe just take it down to about there, and you can see it's a little stretched. Something like that. Let's see, clamp. There we go. I'm just playing around with the options that we have here. There we go. I'm actually pushing this down. There you go. Let's say this is nice. I'm kind of happy with this. So if I now choose this, let's go down to the roughness. Maybe I will cut that out and pump this into the specular weight. No, maybe not. Maybe we'll take this into the specular roughness. So because it's black and white, I'll probably need to just grab one of the colors. There you go. That's the color, that's the weight. And I should be able to start seeing stuff happening. It's color base. So sometimes it's a little bit of trial and error to get this right. I'm not too sure about this. Alright, so I know what I want. So we make the roughness like that. Alright, so if I press this, we should see this more. So to make the light here more apparent, I'm going to use a remap. This will help just push out the black and white. So I'm just going to connect that there, and then we're going to pull out from R to there, and let's make this more a lot more stronger. This is not updating, so let's just do this. There we go. So I've pushed up the colors a bit and I'm dialing down some of the blacks. Alright, so now when you come over here, you can now see some of those highlights on the glass. Alright, so now we got a little bit of dirt. Cool. Alright, so I'm happy with this. I'm going to stop the video here. The next thing I'm going to, you know what, before we do that, let's do a few little changes. So we got transparency here, we got depth. So I'm just going to put the depth here up to 2. And I'm going to give this a little bit of a greenish color. And I'm going to make it really unsaturated. So what we get is this nice, let's do this nice green color. Right, and I can see that almost of the glass is no longer this beautiful glass. It's got a little bit of dirt on it, which is kind of cool. Now, what else can we do? We can just break up a little bit the colors. So if I do this, you can see it gets a little bit of green in there. This is a bit much, so I'm going to go 0.5. Actually, actually, let's make this 100%, see what happens. So what it does, it will kind of break the colors a bit, give it a little more realistic feel to it. I kind of like that. And then the final thing we want to do is under the Advanced tab, you want to turn on caustics and turn on exit to background. So it's going to kind of build onto that. So we're getting these nice little highlight greens in there, and the glass looks very nice. And with that, I'm going to stop. I'm going to pause the video just so it finished render so you can see the final result. And when we come back, we'll look at adding a logo to this. Alright, here's the final render, and you can see we got caustics and got a little bit of light. Yeah, so I'll see you in the next section. Hi, and I'm back. So in this section we're going to look at creating a logo for this. The only difference between when I stopped the video and started up this section is I attached my texture to the film, thin film thickness over here, and that's giving me a little bit of extra dirt on there. Now we can go ahead and make this more elaborate by adding more fingerprints and so on, but for now I think this is good enough, and let's move on. Alright, so I'm going to create a new material and we're going to assign it to the cup. So this is going to be an AI standard surface shader, and I'm going to get rid of the render engine there, and all I need to do is attach the out color from here into the render surface here. So this is turned green because that was selected last, but if I choose this, you'll see it's going to render out. And what I want to do is basically make this a chrome material. So I'm just going to start off with the default settings for that, so we get this really nice chrome setting. And let's just have a look at it quickly. We can see that metallics are pushed up to 100%. The specular is being turned off. Let's see what happens if I bring up the specular. What will it do? Nothing much. It really doesn't do it much. And then we can add a coat to it. Doesn't do anything. So it's basically the basic chrome setup is good enough for what we want to do. Okay, so the next thing I want to attach to the base, I want to attach a texture to it. So in this case, I'm just going to put a just go through the normal Maya texture setup, and I got a texture already made for this. Sorry, this is not in the right folder. There we go, and that would be my beer logo. It's Driftwood's Canadian beer. I'm actually gonna just swizzle around so we can see it. There we go. And this is the result I'm getting. And I think let's have a look, see what else we can do here. So what's creating that really high sheen? Let's see, geometry surface out. It's now metallic. So I guess if I put a mask on this, I can mask that out. So let's give that a try. Do the same thing. And we're going to use this mask later as well. Now we're just going to choose my mask. And it seems to me that this made that non-reflective. So I'm going to create a reverse node. So we want to reverse. And I'm just going to take the out color into input, and then and then the out X to the metallic over there. That should do what I wanted to do. I'm not sure it's actually doing what I wanted to do, but I'm just gonna disconnect that. I was trying. Let's try this like that. So I'll get the editor here. We're gonna go, let's see, this has a output X to, we want to the metallic. There we go. And I'm gonna stop, I'm gonna tear this out and turn it off and restart it. Sometimes that's important to do. It looks like I'm not sure it did what I wanted to do. Alright, so I'm gonna give up on that. Test. And we should now have that all good to go. Alright, so this is my metallic color here. We can play around with some more. Let's say give it some specular, so it's a little, and maybe on the specular highlights and so on, but more or less this is what we want. So the next step is, now that I have this material, and this is going to be called, let's just call this label matte. Sorry about my weird spelling, but just so. Alright, so now we want to kind of combine these two, right? I'm going to keep this because we're going to use this later. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a mix shader node. So there's such a thing in Arnold. So we're going to go AI mix shader, and this will allow me to take two shaders and mix them together. So let's grab the out color of this and attach it there, and the out color of this and attach it there. I'm going to get rid of the mix shader render engine, and then take the out color from here and attach to that. And you can see now I'm getting this mixed effect, but it's 50-50, so it's not exactly what I want. And you can see now very clearly the kind of the dirt on the glass. So how do I fix this? So remember I had this file over here. Let me just delete the number there and should rename it. This file over here, which is my beer mug mask, I could use this over here to basically cut that out. So if I do this, you can see it cuts it out, but I actually don't need the reverse of this. There we go. So I'm going to keep the reverse, I think, for something else. But now I've literally have that cut out. Alright, and now that's rendering out, and you can see that what I'm getting is a nice clear-cut label that's sitting on top. Now we can go ahead and even do some more stuff to this. So I do want to do one little tiny change. Here I attached this to the roughness, not to the color. That's strange. Alright, rotation. Let's go to film. Yeah, that's fine. I don't need to do anything else. I'm happy with this. What I'm not so happy is with this color shift. I'm just gonna get rid of it. Maybe add like 1% of that. Oof, no. I I'm just trying out different numbers to see what I'm gonna get. Yeah, I'm just gonna get rid of it. That's better. I'm gonna make glass a little rougher. Huh, maybe. Oh, this is something that I haven't tried. Let's make let's grab this file over here, this image thing here, right, with the HSV, the one that's making that color, and instead of the specular, I'm going to attach it to the roughness. So I'm going to take this and just drag and drop it on the roughness. So we want to go out color R and find, let's see, we want here in the specular, so transmission roughness. So transmission, transmission. Alright, so it's this one here. There we go. So now I'm getting a different result, and you can see it looks like it's been dirtied up a bit, which I kind of like. But I think it's a little too much, so we're going to go to the HSV here, and I'm just going to dial this down. A lot of this stuff is, you know, trial and error. And I think I'm going to disconnect it from the specular and see what happens. Well, I kind of like this a little more. Anyway, let's move on. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is kind of make the label feel like a sticker, not so much just something that's planted on there. What I'm going to do is create a displacement, and to do that I need to go to my AI shader surface render engine over here, and basically in the attribute editor where it says displacement over here, and I think there's other options. Alright, displacement here, we're going to press that, and then displacement, and we'll create this displacement node. And all I need to do is go find the one that says mask on it. And remember, I had this reverse node from before. I'm actually going to use it. And I'm going to just take the out X and connect it to the displacement. And you will see over here that everything kind of displaces out, which is kind of not what we want. We want to kind of control this. So how do we control this? Here we got some Arnold settings, so we're going to push this to 1, and you'll see this is going to start evening out, and then over here scale 0 value. So we want to play around with this and see how this kind of settles this down a bit. Alright, next thing I want to do is go to the shape node of the mug and go down to Arnold, and under subdivision over here we're going to change it to Kalman Clark, and in this case I'm going to put it up to 3, so I get a much more detailed mug. Alright, and that leaves me to basically come back here and just knock this down to 0.5, let's say. So now that's and getting the detail over here that I wanted and knocking this down. Now I can switch between, let's make this a little different. Yeah, I think this is better. I'm going to get rid of the reverse node. I just took out the, instead of using the alpha, use the color and then just the Alt R, and then you'll get a much nicer cut into there. I think it's still a little too high and probably a little too low res. So again, you can or come here and let's just zero that out and see if that looks better. And let's make this 0.2. That should pull that back in. And again, we can choose the glass itself. And let's knock this up to 4. Hopefully it won't slow down the render too much. Alright, I think the glass is done. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to stop the video, and in the next video we're going to look at how to make the beer. So see you in the next bit. Alright, and we're back. So in the previous video we saw how to make the logo, and I showed you how to use the displacement. Let me just graph everything out for you guys so we can just cover this quickly. So what we have basically two shaders. One shader is controlling the glass, the other one's controlling the logo on top. I basically have an image and a HSV remap that's controlling how much of that image is there. I'm actually going to pause this. Then what we have is the label, and that's just on a shader that's been made into a chrome shader. And I pumped in the material, and then I'm using a mask to mask out between the two materials, and I'm using the same mask for the displacement over here. So it's basically displacing out that object, which I think I'm going to even knock it down some more. So that's almost not displacing at all. So it's going to be very thin. Yeah. So that's what I was doing, and now we're going to move on to something else, which is creating the actual beer inside. So let's just go over here, and I'm going to unhide the beer, and let's have a look. Let's assign a material. So I'm going to assign a new surface shader, standard surface, and we're going to call this beer. Alright, and I'm going to just make this glass for now. We're going to change its properties in a minute. So let's just re-render, and this is the first result that we get. It's not ideal, but it's getting closer. So firstly, I need to change the IOR. That's the index of refraction, and for alcohol it's 1.33. You can find on the internet almost any index of refraction. Then I'm going to go over here and give this a little bit of depth to it so it becomes darker, and we're gonna just make this a little bit yellow, and then I'm gonna give it a specular depth, which we can also make yellow, and then just take that like so. Right now it's more like a T, so let's darken this till it's like a dark ale. Maybe add a little bit of red. Something like that. It's more like whiskey right now, but you know, if we add foam and bubbles in there, it will look more like beer. Alright, so a couple of things are going wrong, and I want to talk about how we're going to solve this. So in Mental Ray, the way that you used to solve it is that all you used to delete the faces inside, and then what will happen, the ray would hit the glass, refract, then hit the liquid, and then refract, and you get the correct refraction. You also had something called a dielectric surface, which again, you would have the light hit the surface, refract, change direction, hit the liquid, refract again, and you'll get exactly what you expected. In this case, we don't have, we could do the first option, which is getting rid of what's inside, but the problem with that is if this was a simulation, it would kind of break the minute the liquid would go higher than whatever the missing faces are. So the way that I was told to deal with this is once you finish the simulation is just scale up your material. So I'm going to hold down Control, grab the top bit here, and I'm just going to scale it up just a little bit so it's just crossing over. And what you're going to get is the correct kind of behavior. So it's refracting and then hitting the liquid and refracting again. And we're getting the correct liquid behavior. So this is refracting on the edge. So now if I turn the camera, I'm actually getting what I expected to get. And you even get the film at the top here. So all in all, that's pretty cool. Now this is a, I should go and break up a little bit the tension at the top here. To do that, there's many ways to approach this. I'm going to just pause that for a minute, and we're going to isolate select, and I'll show you a quick way to create ripples or anything in Maya. So let's say I'm just going to grab these vertices. I'm going to go to deform and create a texture deformer, and by default it should be, well, it's hidden right now, I can't see it. So I'm going to grab that, I'm going to grab my texture deformer and re-isolate select. I'm going to do that, and now we should see both. And I'm just going to grab this and just going to lift it up so it's about there, and there we go. Alright, so all I need to do with this deformer is now pipe in some texture. So I could use just any one of these. So let's use a noise, and you can see immediately that we get an effect, and we can mess around with this. So I'm just going to put waves, and we are going to just play around with their behavior, you know, how big the waves are, time, right? And yeah, let's say this is good. All right. Now what we can do is do a few little changes. So right now it's set to UVs, but we can also set it to local, and then this will do that. And then I can scale it up so we can get a little more effect in that. And then we can also dial this down a bit, or dial it up, so we get, you know, a little bit of breakage. All right. Now if I press 3, it's just going to smooth that out, and I can hide this effector. Control H. No, won't hide it, so that's fine. It doesn't render, so we don't care. So now if I render this out, just turn off the isolation, we should see a little bit of breakage in the top over here of the render. Things should behave a little differently. Again, I can go and, let's say, change the behavior so it's going to get stronger. I can go into this here, and I'm actually going to just dial that a little up so we can get a little bit of the rippling at the top and see the glass. Let's just pull back. There we go. Alright, so if now I want to add bubbles, I can use different ways to create bubbles, but for now, let's make this a little more like an ale. I am just going to go to my beer. Let's see. We can change the specular color to more of a yellow. Let's add a little bit of red. So it's, there we go. And then here, yeah, let's make this darker. There we go. That's more like an ale now. We can make it thicker, and yeah, I think this is about right. Let's make the depth half the depth, so it's a little, the light is not getting in so deep. So this is like a dark ale, more like a dark ale now. Alright, so last thing I need to do is turn on my caustics and exit to background, and this should give us a much nicer result, like so. And we're getting the caustics down here. And then I could also overdrive this a bit by 1.2, and then I'm getting a little more specular out of the alcohol. All right, so that leaves the last thing, and that will be in the next video, bring up the quality of the render. So I'll see you in the next video. Alright, so far we've been rendering in the default quality. You should change it not to work in the default quality so it renders quickly, but in this case I felt that there was no real reason why I shouldn't. So let's just click on the attributes here and make sure that it's set to Arnold attributes, and over here in the Arnold settings you'll see that by default we only have 2 diffuse bounces, 2 specular bounces, and these are just samples. There's 2 samples for each light and each segment that we render out. And the ray depth, it means the times that the ray tracing is being calculated. I usually push this up to 2 by 2. Maybe because we got so many specular highlights here, I'll push this up to 3. It will give me should give me a nicer specular. It doesn't look like it is, so I'm just going to leave it at 2. It's giving me more accurate specular, that's for sure. Volume, not really using it, but I'll put it in 1. 2. So it is now calculating more volume. I think I need to turn this back down to 1. There we go. This will also give me a better caustics. Diffuse is fine. Let's make the diffuse 3 times. So it jumps 3 times. This jumps twice. This calculates the translucency. This calculates the volume. Alright, next thing is to calculate, now calculate how many times it does these calculations. So diffuse 2 I think is fine. We can very easily do some diagnostics by using the AOVs, which is basically breaking out our specular, our diffuse, and everything else into layers, so they separated out. So we separate them out. So we're going to go to beauty over here, and we're going to just scroll down until we find diffuse and indirect diffuse. We want the indirect as well. We want specular and indirect specular. We want transmission and indirect transmission, and volume. And if we had subscatter, we would like to see it. So I'm just going to add all of these. And the cool thing is it's going to do this, but it's also going to, it does them all at the same time. So now I can diagnose what needs the most. So let's start with the diffuse. And for now, this is the floor here. It looks like the diffuse is just rendering out fine. I'm going to wait a little bit. We're going to look at the indirect. It's probably pretty grainy. And all of this should be grainy now because at this stage, there we go, we actually can see now diffuse. We could see at this stage there aren't that many samples. If we look here, we only got like 36 samples of diffuse and 36 samples of specular, and the maximum is 40. So if I bump this up now to 6, it's going to do 144, because it just takes this whatever number is and then times it by 2. So you'll see that it's going to take a little longer to calculate, but you're going to get a better result. So I'll just pause and let it go. Okay, the render is done. It took a little while. On my machine, it's not very powerful, but what you can see now is that the render is done. I'm just going to save it out. But now we can diagnose to see where we can fix stuff up, because as you can see, it's very noisy. So let's start with the diffuse. You can see that the diffuse itself is very noisy. That means that we need more samples in the diffuse. If we look at the indirect diffuse, is also very noisy. We can need more there. Same goes for the specular. Indirect specular is slightly better, but also very noisy. The transmission is very noisy. All of these things look like they need more samples. Alright, so we can do that. I'm also going to make my bucket size a little bigger, like 120, just because it will make, I won't make it go faster, but it will be a little more accurate. Now let's see what we can do to render this out nicely. I don't understand what's going on. Oh, okay, because I'm alright there. So we're gonna go back here to our Arnold settings, and up here we need to knock some stuff up. So let's give this 3 by 3, transmission 3, I don't need SSS, so we can turn that off altogether. And volume also, I can knock this up to at least 3. So I've added a lot more data, so this is going to take a lot longer to render. I could also knock up the AA samples. So I'm going to pause again. I'm going to come back. We're going to look at the result of that. Alright, so it's still rendering, but I thought I would show you guys like the difference. So because it's rendered enough, especially in this area. So I'm gonna just make this A, and you'll be able to see as I move this around from side to side that the previous render, it was pretty grainy, and now it's getting a lot less grainy. It's still rendering out the bottom there, but as we'll progress, you'll see that certain areas are a lot less grainy. So let's have a look at the different layers. So if we go to the diffuse layer, it's not showing it here. Diffuse, indirect. Yeah, so each one of these layers, if I turn this off, you'll see now is a lot less grainy than before. And of course we can up the samples more and more until we get rid of the entire grain. It's a delicate balance. between the samples and the camera AA. You can up the camera AA and get it smoother, but again, that comes in a cost of more time. You can leave it at a low, let's say low number. I'm just going to save this image just so I have a reference point. But let's say I dial this down to 3, and then dial these guys up to, let's say, in this case, 6 samples and 6 samples and 6 samples. Like, I'm just pushing the samples up. So I'm getting more or less the same sample rate. But because it's a lower AA, it's going to render slightly faster. So I'm going to pause it again so it gets to a state where we can see it. What was the previous one? Let's make that one A. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to wrap this up. It's still rendering out, and you could see the slight difference. So like here I have more samples but less camera AA, so it's not as smooth, but it's still a high amount of samples, so the render times are pretty high. So again, it's a lot about getting that right, getting the amount of samples to smooth everything out, and that will bring up your render times. It also depends on like what you're rendering out. This is a very heavy scene. There's a lot of caustics and translucent objects that are very heavily calculated, like the volume here is very heavy calculated. But with all of that said, at the end of the day, we can get really nice renders out by playing around with these settings. There is more comprehensive videos on how to set up your render settings so it doesn't take forever. I'm not going to cover it in this video. This video is just to give you like a quick start and an understanding how to use Arnold nodes and workflow to create something as cool looking as a beer mug. So with that being said, I'm going to end this video, and I'll see you on the flip side, and goodbye.